As coffee shops, we have to find new ways to introduce these things to the people.
This is Keys to the Shop, episode 501, a conversation with 2024 Turkish Brewers Cup Champion, Nida Fetullahoğlu. Well, hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Keys to the Shop, where we give you insights, inspiration, and the tools you need to grow as a coffee service professional. My name is Chris DeFirio. I'm your host for the show, and hello. I'm glad to have you along on the show. And of course, I would encourage you to subscribe to this podcast wherever you're listening to this podcast. If you love what we're doing and it's really been beneficial to you, please leave a 5-star rating or review on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify. I don't know if you know this or not, but you can rate podcasts on Spotify, but you can also put up reviews on Spotify as well, which I don't know why I've been late to the party, but I've just backlogged a bunch of cool comments that people have made on Spotify. But suffice it to say, you can find this show pretty much anywhere, also on YouTube at Keys to the Shop. So for those of you watching, hello, I can see you. You can see me at least. But yeah, subscribe and share these episodes. It's really helpful to let people know that Keys to the Shop is available as a podcast with over 900 published episodes available for the coffee shop community and industry worldwide. So thank you very much. And not only do I spend my time, producing these podcasts, but I also spend a lot of time working one-on-one with coffee shop owners and operators and their teams. If you're looking for a coach or a consultant to help you increase the effectiveness of your operations, the quality of your coffee and your service and hospitality, and just help you to bring your cafe and cafe experience to the next level, more profitability, better hospitality, just more excellence overall. These are a lot of things that I work with my clients on a weekly basis over the last 6 or 7 years now of officially leaning into Keys to the Shop consulting. We've been able to work with over 65 different companies on projects that are both large and small. So if you're interested in working with Keys to the Shop Consulting, just email chris@keys-to-the-shop.com. We're looking to onboard new clients in 2025, and that might be you. And maybe we're the right fit for one another. But let's just have a conversation to see. Okay. So email chris@keys-to-the-shop.com. And, today's sponsor is the Ground Control Brewer and the Pacific Barista Series. Both of these companies are amazing. The Ground Control Brewer has been making waves in the industry for quite a while at groundcontrol.coffee. And the Pacific Barista Series is the cornerstone of plant-based beverages and is preferred by many around the world. At pacificfoodservice.com, you can find more information, but we'll talk a little bit more about them later in the episode. But right now, I want to jump into this conversation. Our interview today is with the 2024 Turkish Brewers Cup champion, Nida Fetullahoğlu. And Nida is a wonderful professional who has a great story that she is going to get to tell us about her professional development, competition experience, and you're going to see a lot of really cool insights that Nida has made as a result of all of the experiences that she's had in her coffee journey. She's been in the coffee industry since 2017. She's located in the Turkish capital, Ankara, and has been living there for about 10 years now. Before coffee, she studied English translation and interpretation in college. She did that for a bit. She did it for a while and just needed a change. And coffee became a full-time job in 2018. And she still dabbles in the world of translation. And remember this idea of translation because it's going to come into play later in the episode as we talk about coffee. She's actually translated 4 books into Turkish on different subjects. So that's pretty cool. Starting as a barista in a boutique coffee shop in Ankara, she fell in love with the great people, the coffee industry, and just pursued it as a career and has been roasting since 2020. And for the last 2 years as a full-time roaster. She's currently working in Tetra N Roastery as a junior roaster. And this year has become the Brewers Cup Champion for Turkey, placing 18th in the World Championships. This is something that is obviously very impressive. But when you hear Nida talk about her career and the way she views the industry and how she synthesizes her past studies and career with coffee, I think you're going to be even more impressed because it really hits on a lot of the themes that we at Keys to the Shop value. But when you hear this conversation with Nida and get to know how she synthesizes her experience in her other career in translation, with the experiences in coffee, and what she has to say about how she has learned wisdom and intuition and vulnerability and how to work through challenges from barista to roasting to competition. It's really going to be inspiring. And so I was really grateful to get the opportunity to interview Nida on the show. I think today's episode is going to give you a lot to think about. In fact, I would say at key moments in this podcast, I would encourage you just maybe pause it and meditate on that idea that Nida puts out there, because it really, several intervals is going to be some pretty deep stuff that I think could really help encourage you and direct the course of your career in a positive way. So, without anything else from me, let's get right to it. Here now is my conversation with the 2024 Turkish Brewers Cup champion, Nida Fetullahoğlu. Hey, Nida. Welcome to Keys to the Shop. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you. It's good to be here. How are you?
Oh, I'm great. Yeah, it's like fall here in the eastern US, so doing well. You're all the way out there in Turkey, huh?
Yes. Yeah, I'm across the ocean. It's also fall here too, so that's nice.
Oh, nice. Very cool. We must be on like similar latitudes here.
hmm
But I am thrilled to get to sit down with you and talk to you. I met you at SCA at the Etkin Brewer booth.
Yeah.
Fine folks over there, Turkish porcelain brewer. Got a couple in my house. Shout out to Etkin. But yeah, it was great to meet you there and then learn about your story as you are a champion. You are the Turkish Brewers Cup champion and a longtime coffee professional. So I want to really just kind of start by asking you the beginning question of how did you start to choose coffee as a career, or maybe even just how was it a part of your life even before you started to make it a professional pursuit?
So before I make this as my profession, as my career, of course, like I consume coffee and I always had this specific taste regarding that department. Like I always knew what I liked, but I wasn't like into it like as a hobby. But me starting as a barista, as a coffee person in the industry started as I was having a hard time in college in terms of money. I was actually like studying at the same time and I was doing that job. I studied translation and interpreting in college and I worked as a translator for a long time. But then I realized that maybe that's not the thing for me. It was such a huge mental load. So maybe I thought it was time for a change. I started as a barista in a little coffee shop in Ankara, which is the capital of Turkey. Everyone thinks that it's Istanbul, but it's not. I started as a barista and then I was lucky enough to have amazing coworkers who would like teach me about coffee. And then after some research, of course, getting caught up in your podcast, that happened then. My first year as a barista. And then I started, maybe I thought like I can do this as a job. And I took some SCA courses and then I got into roasting real bad. And then I moved on to another workplace where I can learn about more roasting. And like my whole career pretty much moved forward in the same theme. Like, what can I learn? What can I do like differently? What can I get for myself to move myself forward? So that's what I did.
Wow, I didn't know that you did roasting as well. It sounds like you got a lot of experience pretty quickly.
Yeah, actually, you know what? Like, yeah, that happened pretty quickly. I worked as like a barista like 2 years. After that, I moved on to like another roastery, but it was like a coffee shop at the same time. But like I moved up, I learned about some roasting, and like actually, I was a barista and a roaster at the same time for a long time. Actually, only like 2 years ago, 1.5 years ago, I got a job in another roastery in Ankara, and that was my first time as a full-time roaster, like no bar shifts, just roasting. full time. And yeah, it's tough. It's brutal, but I like it.
I was going to ask, it's one thing to do it a little bit part time, but then doing it full time must be a big difference, a big change of pace.
So big. Yeah, it was hard to get used to it at first. But like at the same time, I was like really into it and I was kind of sick of bar shift. I was like bored. I'm sorry, like I'm not into bar shifts. Like it's fun and like getting interactions and working as a team. I love that. That's actually one thing I miss as a roaster because roasting is a very solo gig, and it's not glamorous. It's not as glamorous as being a barista in a bar. And I miss the camaraderie, sure. But like roasting is just, it's endless and like there are always something to learn. But in a bar shift, sometimes it gets to be really monotonous, like, really boring. This is my experience, my opinion, but it's the same coffee, sometimes same customers every day. And I felt stuck for a long time, but with roasting and like being in that production process really helped me as a professional too. And it really changed my perspective towards the whole industry. People doesn't know I roast as well most of the time, but I do roast and I roast a lot, like 6 days a week.
Wow. Okay. So can I ask a little bit about what you just mentioned, how it changed your perspective on the industry, on coffee? What specifically changed as you took on roasting?
I had a more in-depth knowledge about coffee
Mm.
because like of course I'm always interested in coffee like in terms of like academic as well. I love to study about coffee like pen and paper. I have some article in front of me and I'm reading about maybe brewing, about water, about varieties. I love that. But when you move on to the production side, you have to be more on contact. You have to know these in order to produce that thing. And like as a barista, I used to give a lot of crap to roasters too. So that's my karma happening to me.
You used to always blame the roaster?
Yeah, yeah, I was one of those who always blames the roaster, but now as a roaster, I understand that sometimes it's my fault. Yeah, but not all the time.
Sure. Well, then you have this how things work perspective on coffee, and your journey through different jobs is no doubt changing the way you personally pursue, things professionally. Like you're getting used to just being in coffee professionally from being a student to then in general to translation to now translating that to being a student of coffee. Did you find that you personally changed in very many ways because of having to interact with a variety of personalities in a coffee shop or personal organization and that kind of thing?
Exactly. I mean, I realize that like I worked in different positions in coffee industry. Like I worked in a whole different career as well. And I was able to like adapt to all of them like to some extent. I realized that like if you have to be good at something, you have to have, something in your personality. Like as a roaster, one thing I have to say, like I need to have this trait in my personality, like as a roaster. That would be intuition and focus. I realized about myself while I was working as a roaster, while I started as a, roaster, because I'm in front of the computer, I'm looking at the screen, I'm listening, I'm smelling, like I'm using everything at the same time, like multitasking. Multitasking actually, that's something I learned from my interpreting days because like someone is talking and I have to translate at the same time. That's multitasking. As a roaster, I learned about focus and intuition. Being a barista, I think that's the most difficult job in everything that I've ever done because you're always like touching people, like you're in contact with people, with conversation, and like with feelings and with words. So everything, like in combined, of course, it all adds up to me as a person. But like every job I take, like no matter how different they are, I always learn something about myself.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And, we're big fans of the idea that your vocation is kind of a journey of identity in a lot of ways. You bring yourself to work. And I like that you brought up intuition, which a lot of people believe intuition is simply a matter of synthesized experience, like just wisdom, that now, if you look at a coffee today, having the experience you have, your intuition is based on all of the experience that you had making mistakes as a barista, making mistakes as a roaster, and addressing those mistakes. What would you say have been the biggest challenges for you in the retail and in the roasting epochs of your career?
Biggest challenge in roasting, you say?
Yeah, yeah. And in the retail part, like with working as a barista.
So as for roasting, consistency is a big problem.
Always.
That was a challenge for me because like I said, like I roast like 6 days a week, and like the most important thing I can have is consistency. Like that's a lot of coffee, that's a lot of roasting, a lot of batches, so I have to be consistent. So my first challenge as a roaster was always, and sometimes it still is, consistency. But as a barista, I would say, I mean, people in general is a challenge. I'm not a people person. I have to tell you. Like I do it. I'm not a grumpy person. Like it's my job, and I have to be like sometimes like smiley and sincere and friendly at the same time. But sometimes it's just so difficult. And as a barista, I often used to let other people, put me down. Like sometimes the customer comes in and like it's just your whole day is just over and you get upset. And my biggest mistake was there. Like I get that upset feelings and I took them home with me,
Ooh,
like
yeah.
all day, every day. Yeah, that was the biggest mistake and challenge for me to put that all behind at work. When I leave my shift, it's all just there. And, nothing comes home with me. It's just me. That was a difficult thing for me.
Wow, that's a huge lesson to learn because when you're passionate about something, you allow a lot of your emotions and you get vulnerable with it too. I mean, working in coffee, like I love coffee. I love the story of coffee. I love, that I can see myself growing as a professional. And then when somebody insults you or something goes wrong, it's hard not to get those very personal depths of your being hurt along the way because you're giving yourself to the work. But it sounds like you've learned how to become resilient and compartmentalize a little bit.
Exactly. I had to in order to survive because that was my job.
Yeah.
I do that like 10 hours a day. So I had to find a way to survive. And I actually thought of another thing, a challenge as a roaster, criticisms, because like roasting can be open to interpretation, and you roast something, maybe like it's for the first time, I profiled something, okay, some coffee, and the next day we put it on the table and we have our, quality check process and we like taste it, we cup it, and then everything is wrong. Like you, while roasting, you think that you did everything right, and it's not
Yeah.
even that difficult of a coffee. It's not geisha, it's not pink bourbon. It's just, it's just some washed Colombian. I don't know, but it's like you think that you did everything right, but on the table, it's just, oh my god, it's the worst, and you cannot sell it. You cannot put it in a, package and send it to a customer. No, it's just, it goes away, and sometimes it's really hard to, take that hit. And the worst part is you don't know where you did wrong, so you have to pull up the profiles and you just have to analyze it over and over again, trying to find a mistake. Sometimes then there is no answer. Like the next day you roast again and, it's fine. The next day it's fine. That was another challenge for me because I don't know the reason. What went wrong? Yeah, that was another thing. But when you get it right, it's the most rewarding thing ever. Like you roast the coffee and the next day you cup it. The most rewarding thing ever. That's why I love it.
Yeah, and it sounds like I see these on YouTube or Instagram where the game where you put your hand in a box but you don't know what's in it.
Yeah.
And it's something really nothing. It's like a potato, but you think it's a monster or something like gross because you can't see it. It feels way scarier than it actually is. And you talking about how now the next day, if you haven't been able to track down that maybe it was an airflow issue or maybe it was, a charge temperature issue. If you don't know what it was, you have to enter into that black box of, am I going to do it again? Am I just going to roast another?
You have like lots of those coffee. You have to roast them.
Yeah.
You're gonna go back.
I mean, it's brave, I suppose, to do something like that. And it almost feels like the game here is to close the gap between those really good moments of cuppings, like to make everything so it might be high, low in extremes when you first learn, and to start to make everything sort of similar in achievement. Like, I know I'm going to hit a really good coffee every time, maybe a little bit better the next time, but not so much worse the next time. And as much as you do that now, I suppose you're probably at that level at this point.
It changes, you know. Actually, roasting is really, this is not like discovering a whole new content. This is nothing new. But like roasting is really similar to brewing in terms of like principle. So in roasting, we have like color changes, we have like taste development stuff. Also, we have in the brewing, we have like extraction, you know. You start brewing, coffee and water comes in contact, and you keep brewing, and you have to know where to stop, right? Because at some point it's gonna be bitter, it's gonna be like over extra. You have to know where to stop. In roasting, it's the same. You have to know where to stop. But of course, a lot more complicated because you have like 1,000 things happening at the same time. But yeah, I think it's important to, you know, make these kind of connections, you know, like when I realized this, like, oh, roasting and brewing, oh, they're kind of actually similar. It's like they have like same principles actually. Like this opened my world. I think it's important to, you know, discover these kind of connections. They're not like novelties, of course. They exist, but discovering them on your own, it's actually really rewarding.
It's very affirming of the fact that what you've learned in one area is applicable to something else that's consequential to coffee. I can see how when you can make that connection, how it would energize you and also help you succeed in both of those disciplines, which kind of leads me to the idea of your competition career, because as a Brewers Cup champion, I'm guessing that this factored into how you approached your routine. I mean, how did competition in brewing start for you? Was it around the time that you started roasting coffee, kind of earlier in your career?
Actually, yeah, my first time, I've been roasting since 2020, you know, on and off and on again, you know, because it was during the pandemic and stuff. But my first competition was actually 2 years ago in 2022. I did not have a good thing going on. I came like, I don't know, 16 out of 20, something like that. It wasn't good. But I learned a lot when I had the chance 2 years later. I got the chance. Actually, this year I wasn't even gonna compete. You know, that happened like really fast, really quickly. I wasn't gonna compete because this year, as a team in the roastery, we sat down and decided that we're not gonna do competitions this year because it's a lot of effort, it's a lot of time and money. We're not gonna do it. We're already busy as it is, so we're just gonna focus on our business. But in Turkey, usually they do these competitions in Istanbul. Okay, that's an important information. But this year, they announced that they're going to do the Barista and Brewers Cup in Ankara. That's my city. And that got me really excited because they're also kind of a, there always been a beef between baristas from Istanbul and baristas from Ankara, you know. I don't know if
Ooh.
you have this kind of thing. It's not like competition, but we have like different approaches in terms of customer service for one. I thought maybe a champion from Ankara, that would be nice. I got that idea. And I texted my senior head roaster. I'm a junior roaster. We are two. Actually, we were two. I texted him saying that maybe we should do this. Like they're going to do it in Ankara. And, you know, it's our city. Let's do this. And he completely ignored me. He was in Istanbul at the time. And in some, you know, random coffee shop, he ran into Michael. They knew each other from another competition.
Yeah.
So they were like talking, and he actually saw my text, and, you know, he said to Michael, like, my friend wants to compete, and maybe we can do something with Etkin Draper, etc. And then it happened. That's like how I decided to compete. You know, I got
Wow.
really excited because it was going to happen in Ankara as a barista located in Ankara. I'm really proud of that. Being a champion from Ankara, that's really
Of
that's
course.
the first
Yeah.
in Turkey, by the way.
Well, congratulations, of course. And what was it that was the biggest difference for you between the 16th place finish that you did in 2022 and your championship routine?
Team, one word, team.
Team.
That's it.
Okay.
I had no team back then. And this time around, of course, like I did some things too. I improved myself, I got some knowledge thing going on. I got my courses, I improved myself, etc. But team, this is not something that I could do on my own. This is not something anyone can do on their own. That's it.
Mm.
The biggest difference is definitely the team. Someone who gives you an opinion, a different opinion than your own. And of course, you have to be able to listen to them.
Hey everyone, it's Chris again, and we'll be right back with our interview with our friend Nida. But I wanted to talk to you a little bit more about our sponsors today. Of course, the Ground Control Brewer at groundscontrol.coffee has been for years now elevating the standard of batch brew coffee for baristas and coffee shops. Before the Ground Control, with its SCA award-winning technology, batch brew was kind of limited. This has opened up the floodgates, I guess, of flavor. Floodgates of flavor. That's a great way to put it. And giving you control over this broad spectrum of flavor you could pull from coffee. But not only is this a next level batch brewer, but the Ground Control also can make extracts for batched espresso and cold brew. So it makes it kind of an all-in-one machine. The new brewer coming on market very soon. It is 30% higher output of those extracts, but it's also smaller in footprint. So best of both worlds. Look into groundcontrol.coffee for this brewer and see if this is the right fit for you. If you want to elevate your quality and have an all-in-one brewer that helps you with efficiency, this might be for you. Again, at groundcontrol.coffee. Also, today's episode is brought to you by the Barista Series, plant-based beverages. The plant-based performance beverages that Pacific produces under the Barista Series name has been the standard for quality plant-based beverages in the industry since forever. And they also have set the standard and continue to lead the pack in how a company can support a community, an industry, and individuals. And they've been doing this for decades. And so I'm always excited to tell you this is something you should look into. Go to pacificfoodservice.com and get samples of the Barista Series to try for yourself. It stands up to the heat from steaming, creates amazing texture for latte art, and it keeps the balance of the beverage focused on the coffee. So if you're interested in serving the best plant-based beverages to your customers, then check out the Barista Series from Pacific by visiting pacificfoodservice.com. All right, now let's get back to our conversation with Nida Fetullahoğlu, the Turkish Brewers Cup Champion of 2024. The idea that you have outside opinion coming in, you have to open yourself up to criticism, which you had just mentioned was really difficult to do, but you had become a part of your job as a roaster.
Yeah.
So, you're cupping the coffees, but now, people are critiquing the way that you move between your different pour overs and how to best use your time and the taste of the coffee, the recipe. It's difficult because you are a professional and you have some professional pride and trusting somebody else's opinion, even though you feel really strong. How do you just decide that you're going to open yourself up to that critique?
You have to pick your battles. So I have lots of people who gave me opinion, but I'm not saying this in a bad way. It was all positive. But like my coaches, like I had one coach specifically. He always told me that like I'm not gonna tell you what to do. I'm gonna tell you like what we can do, and if you feel comfortable with that, you can do it. But other than that, it's okay. He always told me that, and I'm really grateful for that. So like you have to pick your battles. Sometimes it's about like trust. Sometimes maybe it doesn't feel right at the moment, but you trust that person and you trust their experience. And you have to be like, I don't know like how this is going to work, but I trust you and I trust your gut. So I'm going to do this. But it's some other case, maybe like someone is telling you what to do and you're like, no, I don't feel comfortable with that. Like my heart isn't set on that. So I'm going to do it this way. Like you have to be, I don't know, you have to like trust that person. But of course, there's always a limit. You should never do something that you're not comfortable. That's the line.
Yeah.
Limit.
Don't violate your integrity
Yeah,
or your values, but know the difference between, like, not everything is your values and not everything is integrity.
exactly. Like you have to be open about it. Like you have to, because you have your own ideas, but like this is a competition. You need something new, maybe something like innovative, and like you never know which idea is gonna come from, like, different direction. It can come from anywhere. So you have to be like open about it. But I was like pretty meticulous about the people I choose to be on my side.
Oh,
Like I had my team in my roastery, that's two. I had Michael and Aaron, that's four. And I had like some other person, which I like respect like dearly. He's also another icon for me in the industry in Turkey. So I had like five people like I would just, talk about, but different stuff. They all had their own, expertise. I would talk with my like head roaster about the recipe. I would talk with Michael about the score sheets. I would talk with Aaron about like what I wear or how I look. I would talk about teacher, about the the cupping scores, maybe the tasting notes. They all had their expertise, and I would know what to ask them. That's where the mentorship idea comes in. I guess they were all like mentors to me at some point.
yeah.
They were like coaches, like that was in the book, by the way. The difference between a coach and a mentor. They were my coaches in that period, but like when I look at my whole life, like the progress of it, they were also like mentors at some point in different cases of my life.
Yeah. And you're referring to the Ruth Gauthier book on mentorship.
Yes, that's a good read. Go check it out.
Yeah, go check it out. Yeah, she's great. And that's a past episode on our podcast, maybe like a month ago. But when you're speaking about this, of course, on Keys to the Shop, the part of the Keys to the Shop is the shop and the customer facing expression of coffee in general. As you talk about team, I can't help but think if I replace the word competition with business, it would still benefit from a team
Yes.
where you open yourself up to the critique from outside opinions, to be open to it and not be defensive. And actually, you probably could improve your business by having that.
Yes, right. That's what I've been saying to all my ex bosses, but they won't listen. They don't listen ever. Like, be open to criticism. Like, let's just, open communication, let's just talk about it. How can we do better? This is an open conversation. Like, we can do it and we can be better, but no, they would not listen. They still don't.
Well, you can beat everybody to the punch if you're an owner listening to this by simply, if you were going to compete and you heard, hey, Nida said you need a team, just get yourself a team. Tap into that mentorship.
And use people, use their strengths in your advantage. There's, not, when I say use, yeah, that comes out maybe wrong, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Now, every person has their strengths, and in a business place, an owner, like a boss, whatever you call a CEO, should know like how to mobilize that, how to put those strengths in operation. That's part of being a boss, I guess. I believe, I assume, and they just don't listen. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's hard. It's a hard slog. There's a lot of risk involved, and the best of us out there in the world of any profession, I think, are the ones who have a sense of learned resiliency that allows people to give us feedback that doesn't threaten our peace, but we are able to sort that into categories of usefulness and not useful and that kind of thing. So hopefully more of us get there than not. But going back to your competition, when you went up there to compete and you presented, what from your past experiences in coffee did you integrate into what you actually did and what you talked about?
In my routine, like in the competition, so Brewers Cup is kind of tricky. It's different in a way that you have to put on a show, there's a stage part of it. It's not like, for example, roasting, roast and, present your coffee. But in barista and brewers, you have to put on a show, you have to talk about like what you're doing, and you have to be consistent about it. Like, you're saying that to the judges, like, you're gonna find strawberry and they're not finding the strawberry, that's a problem. So what I integrated, like consistency was the key part for me. Like if I ever gonna win this thing, it's gonna be through consistency. So I, kind of worked that in my routine, like how I practice. Okay, so I was kind of lucky because I work in a roastery and I was able to create a really good workspace for my practices. So it was all about consistency. Like I said, that was the first challenge I faced as a roaster. And when I decided to compete, I realized that this is going to be another, a monster that I have to slay. Consistent. I have to be consistent in what I say and what I do. So yeah, that was the like my focus point in my routine. Also, like I said, there's a like a showmanship part. I also worked that in too. Being a barista, like working in a bar, that's also another show, another stage. So you're smiling, you're trying to, make people smile also. You look sincere and friendly. That's another show to me, that's another stage. So I just use that charm.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I feel like that's part of what we do in representing the work of what the value stream has already done in putting on a show. We talk about authenticity. So we live in both a world where we value the show, and the word performative often gets a bad rap because it is a performance. It is a artificial environment of hospitality. If you go into a coffee shop and you get these things, competition's the same thing, but it's all in the cause of putting our best foot forward to represent the thing that will ultimately create more of a virtuous cycle in specialty coffee or just coffee in general, I guess. How do you view right now, and this kind of opens up to a broader question, because you've been involved in lots of facets of the industry and in competition in retail and roasting, right now in coffee, as you look to see what's developing, what do you think is the next best thing for us to focus our energy on that would do the most good for coffee? Stuff that we can do, especially in like coffee shops and in roasteries.
This question has like two answers. Like I don't know the whole situation in the US. So I have to, talk about in my case in Turkey. I think what we should do, but like this is like a general rule and I think everyone can apply it. As for roasteries, I think we should focus on more like sustainability and sensory. Sensory is like the key for everything, I believe. And also we have to be able to, I say like intuition, guessing the right answers. Intuition, that's what it is, like guessing the right thing at the right time when it's correct. So we have to have intuition and we have to be able to foresee the future at some point, and we should really use some of our energy to be more sustainable in our roasteries. Like this can be like in terms of what we use as a material in our packages, or this can be like what we choose as a coffee, in the farms, from plantations, from washing stations. And the other part, like as for coffee shops, I would say, like my mind always goes to that idea of a team. We have to be able to build a team. I see this like everyday coffee shops in Turkey. They open one day and then they go under the next day. And, it's the same story every day. It's not about money. They have money, but they don't have team. Like I ask someone like every day, a guy comes in like and he's talking about his dream opening a coffee shop, and he does eventually. It's good for him, but it's his like next day the shop is gonna open, and I ask him, so who's gonna work, who's the barista? And he's like, oh, we'll find someone. No, you're not gonna find someone. Just find someone. You should have find that someone yesterday. You need
Yeah.
someone yesterday. So yeah, that's like the main issue, I think. Building a team, really appreciating your team and listening. That's what we should be focusing on today. Like that was the thing yesterday. It is the thing now, and it's gonna be the thing in the future because there is nothing to build if you don't have a team. And the second thing is, of course, sustainability. And if you have a team, of course, you're gonna be sustainable and you're gonna sustain your business.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
really easy.
Those are two wonderfully put things, like well said. And the team part is, yeah, if you do have that team, the sustainability is going to come up at some point as a point of concern, especially the idea. I've heard this said. We did a sustainability series years ago that what somebody said, the best thing that you can do as a roastery or as a retailer is sell more coffee. and, stay open. Stay, if you stay open and you sell more coffee, then what is grown can be sold at your shop. See, pretty simple, right?
Duh. I mean, that's what, we're trying to do. It's true,
Sure.
but how?
Exactly. And it comes from that team aspect that you focused in on. And speaking of the idea of, we all operate in different cultural contexts, and there are lots of different opportunities for us, maybe here in the South or elsewhere in the US or the world. Here's our cultural understanding of coffee, and here's this newer thing, maybe a new to that culture. And in Turkey, of course, with Turkish coffee, it is the oldest way of making coffee.
Yeah.
In your experience, I'm sure that there's been a lot of movement on this. What has it been like to be a spokesperson for specialty coffee in the midst of such an ingrained coffee culture? What works best for you to bridge the gap between current cultural understandings of coffee and successfully integrating new understandings of coffee?
It all goes through communication. So Turkish coffee, that way of brewing coffee is all this time. But like specialty coffee in Turkey is actually pretty new. Like when I went to Chicago, that's what I realized. I mean, in the US, you have like a good 20 years, 25 years for you, okay? But like in Turkey, we have like a fresh decade now. So of course, like at some point, Turkish coffee, that traditional way of making coffee, met with specialty coffee, and the result is wonderful. And I remember actually, he was one of your guests, Tuncay Yıldız, one of the first Turkish coffee champions, and he was a guest in the show too. Yeah, years ago he mentioned this as well, like the natural thing to happen. You have this old way of thinking, old way of doing things, and you have this new thing, and you combine them. It's gonna create waves. It's gonna create other new doors for people to peek in, and that's what happened in Turkey. Of course, we're like, I believe we have still a long way to go, but in terms of specialty coffee and Turkish coffee, they're like best friends. And actually, in terms of like competitions too, Cezve Brick Turkey is really good, because in this year's competition, Kevser Atmaca, another great colleague from Turkey, she won the second place prize in Cezve Brick Championship in Copenhagen. So it's all good, but like, how do we like translate this new thing to the people? For example, like my parents, they love coffee because of me, because like I do this for a while, and they have their whole setup, V60s, lots of gadgets, grinders, like everything.
Yeah.
But like, what about the others? What about their friends? They still like, that old way of drinking coffee. This is where the coffee shop comes in. If I can serve a coffee to my parents in that coffee shop, that doesn't mean anything. I think that's one of the problems. The coffee shop doesn't know how to translate this new information to the old people, old way of people. You know what I mean? I think we have to really fill that gap with a bridge, and to the, other people. We shouldn't be intimidated by a new thing. This is a cultural thing, of course, but us Turkish people, we're not really open to change. We really love our old way of doing things. So when a new thing comes in, we are like, most of the time we're suspicious. Like
Mm.
we don't trust it. So we have to, as coffee shops, we have to find new ways to introduce these things to the people. Like older generation, I like, in my coffee shop, I want to be able to serve a cup of coffee to my grandma. If she's not interested, why do I do this? Doesn't mean anything. So it's a communication problem.
Yeah, well said. And it feels like if you can win over somebody who is in love with their current way of doing things and get them to love this way, their energy is going to just have such an exponentially huge impact on that thing. But it's harder to get them to share that love with the new way, but it's worth the pursuit. And you're a translation expert. I mean, this was your field of study. So I love that you're talking about how to translate this to that generation. So based on the principle of what you need to do, intuition, like you're listening, but you're having to think about the next thing to say to convey the emotion of the speaker, but also the accuracy of it. like what's the principle we could use from translation work in language to translation of coffee ideas?
Oh, I love this question. I love it. Okay. So actually, remember the time like 15 minutes ago, I said roasting and brewing, they're like really similar in principle.
Yeah.
So translation and coffee are the same. Coffee is also this whole journey of translation. We translate coffee constantly. I mean, why do we roast the coffee? To make it consumable, because it's not consumable when it's green. So we have to translate it. And why do we translate it differently? Because every coffee is special, like different varieties, different processes. So we have to be really attuned and careful about doing the right kind of translation. That is roasting. And then after roasting, we have to do again a form of translation, brewing. We have to be able to understand that coffee, about its characteristics, about its potential, and we have to find the best way to translate that bag of beans into a beautiful cup of coffee. This whole coffee thing is a translation. That's one of the main things I realized when I first started this job, and I was like in love instantly. So I love this question, and I have thought about it like for years.
I love it. It's so helpful what you just said. And I would encourage everybody to play it back and just visualize the kind of things that Nida is talking about here. I mean, you really are, when you observe what you do with your hands with the coffee and how people enjoy it, you're taking in this information all the time, right? And your mind is going to come up with innovative ways to make it more effective for people to enjoy and for you to be more consistent, like you were talking about.
Exactly. I mean,. Everybody loves coffee. There's nothing to misunderstand. Everybody loves coffee. If we're not trying to make people love something they do not. No, they already do, but we're just trying to show something different.
Hmm.
Some different perspective, another interpretation, another translation. I mean, why not? If that person is open enough to try it, that's a win. They don't even have to like it. Just try it, and that's a win for me.
Excellent. Excellent. Nita, no doubt we could continue talking quite a bit about coffee,
Oh,
endlessly
yeah.
fascinating. But I really appreciate you being here to open up our understanding of the connections that coffee has in roasting and brewing and translation. And, your professional development story is really inspiring. So thank you. And how can we stay in tune with you? I mean, we can follow you on social media. How would we just get connected?
So I have Instagram. My social media game is not good, but you can always DM me. It's Senitfe, Senifde.
Hmm.
Yeah. Or you can just put my name on, and because I don't think anyone's gonna have the same name, so you're good. You're gonna find me.
Okay.
You can always shoot a message. And this was amazing, Chris. Thank you so much. This is another dream coming true for me, and thank you so much.
Oh, honored to talk to you. It was so fun. And thank you again, Nita.
Oh, thank you so much.
All right, everybody. Well, what did you think? And let me know. I mean, I asked these questions. They might seem rhetorical, but I really want to know what you think about these episodes. I thought that this was a really cool episode and had, like I mentioned in the beginning, several points. The idea of translation, the idea of team, the idea of being able to be vulnerable and open and overcome challenges by developing intuition. There's so many things that Nita has learned in her career that has been shared that I think if you apply these to your own career, it's going to help guide you. And that was just a ton of great value and wisdom that Nita shared. So huge thank you to Nita for being on the show. In the show notes, you can find links where you can find out more about her work. You can find a link to her performance at the Worlds and at the Turkish Brewers Cup Championship. You can find also her social media. But you can also, in the show notes, find links to related episodes. We talk about things related to the topics brought up in today's episode. So I always recommend you go and follow that little logic train, I suppose, that my recommended episodes usually are going to be pretty directly related to things like, for instance, team or how to communicate well or navigating challenges in your career or even just translating the cultural understanding of coffee in countries where, there's, a set culture of coffee to specialty coffee and so forth. So check that out in the show notes. And if you have any questions about today's episode, always feel free to reach out to me, Chris at keystotheshop.com. That's just CHRIS at keystotheshop.com. And if you are interested in working with Keys to the Shop Consulting, that's also where you can reach out. Now, one of the places that you can also find some great resources is over at coffeefest.com. 30 plus years, Coffee Fest has been putting on a trade show / education and resource event. That's the way I refer to it, because it's not just, hey, let's show up and talk to some great vendors and learn about what products are, current and can help our coffee bar. That's a huge part of it. But it's also, let's come together and do some fun competitions. Let's have some panel discussions and lectures and trainings and workshops, many of which are free and or really reasonably priced, but deliver really outsized value for what you're paying to do it. It remains probably the best event for you to attend if you're looking for just street level, practical, applicable resource for your business. And I will stand by that. Having been in this industry for like 25 years now, I could safely say there's a huge value here. So check them out at coffeefest.com. Next show is actually this week in Minneapolis, so hopefully I'll see you there. I'm speaking as I do at every Coffee Fest, but check out 2025. Lots of shows coming up in the new year, and I hope to see you there as well. Remember, go to coffeefest.com. And now I want to introduce you to a new sponsor we have at Keys to the Shop, our friends over at Arto Brick. Arto Brick can satisfy all your hard surface design needs, from brick to tile and stone. They design, manufacture, and curate hard surfaces for one-of-a-kind places. That's restaurants and homes, commercial spaces, coffee shops. And so if you're looking to really stand out in the way you welcome people in your space, your unique coffee shop needs a unique feel and texture to it. That is what Arto Brick does. Follow them on Instagram, reach out, DM them. That is at Arto Brick, ARTO Brick. And you can also go to their website, arto.com. Look at the story of the brand. I think you're going to be super impressed, and I just love the work that they do. And your coffee shop will look amazing. So again, reach out to them, DM them, tell them that you heard about them through Keys to the Shop, and Chris told you that you need to use Arto Brick. And with that, that is the end of our episode, sadly. And also, hopefully, because there'll be another episode where we get to join one another in the airwaves and talk about coffee, talk about leadership and management and career, and just build a better world of coffee for the people who enjoy it, who work in it. And I appreciate all of you. I really do. And if you subscribe to the show, you'll always be updated. Don't forget, we're on YouTube, all the podcast channels. Share the show, and as always, I hope that this episode has truly given you keys to the shop.